Good morning and welcome to Falling Walls Conversations. I'm Charlotte Stoddart. I'm a science filmmaker and podcaster, making content for Nature and other science magazines. And today I'm your moderator for this conversation with Ottoline Leyser. First, some technical notes. We have 25 minutes for this conversation, and you, the digital audience, are invited to ask questions. So if you have a question at any point, please click on the raise hand button in Zoom, and then one of our technical people will spotlight you if you're chosen to ask the next question. And then please wait for me to let you know that it's time to speak. If you have any technical difficulties, you can let us know in the chat section of Zoom, and then one of our technical people will try to help you. This conversation is being recorded and will be available on the Falling Walls website after the Science Summit. Okay, let's meet Ottoline Leyser. Ottoline is Chief Executive of UK Research and Innovation, and she's also Regius Professor of Botany at the University of Cambridge. And she spent decades looking into the role of plant hormones in plant growth and development, alongside campaigning for greater inclusivity and connectedness in the culture of science. And Ottoline, let's talk about that first. When you think about the culture of science, where do you think there is room for improvement?
Well, there's lots of things I think to think about in that question. I suppose at the core, I think we still have this idea of science as driven forward by these kind of lone genius, heroic leader type figures. I guess Einstein is the classic example. And I think that whilst we need a huge range of different sorts of people in science, we definitely need Einstein, but at the same time, that creates an image that both most of the people working in the research system feel is a difficult image to live up to. There's a lot of imposter syndrome, if you want to put it that way. And it also creates an image that looks very inaccessible to people who don't consider themselves to be in the system. So it creates walls. And, we're here at the Falling Walls conference, and I think taking down that wall, that particular wall, would be transformative, both in the context of the culture of research, because people would feel then it was much more of a collective endeavor, much more supported at all scales by those immediately around them, but also by wider society. And wider society would feel that science was much more by them and for them, and much less done by strange Einstein-like people in a shiny laboratory over there. So I think that shift in the concept of what science is really about is a really key goal for societies as we build back after the pandemic, particularly.
These days, science is much more about teamwork and international collaborations. And I wonder how you think that we can make the culture of science very supportive of those big teams and collaborations and make those work successfully.
I think actually science has always been about teamwork in many ways. And when people talk about teamwork, again, partly because we still have this sort of brilliant genius notion that what they're thinking about then is a whole group of brilliant geniuses working together, which is again fine, and at some level that goes on. But science to work needs way more people than that. It needs not only the researchers and the innovators themselves, but also all of the people who work with them, the science communicators and the technicians and the people who run the facilities and the administrators and the project managers. And so it's a massively collective endeavor, and anybody working in the research system has that extraordinary support network around them. And that's the shift that I think we need to think about. We need to value all the contributions that go into research, not just those of a particular part of that community. And if people feel much more broadly part of that community, then I think everybody in that system will feel better, and far more people will be able to see how they could contribute, what their role could be.
And is that something that you're thinking about in your new role with UK Research and Innovation?
Absolutely. It was a major driver for me coming into this role. So UK Research and Innovation is the major public funder of research and innovation in the UK, and it's a relatively new organisation that has brought together the 7 disciplinary research councils that fund research and innovation in particular disciplines, and also Innovate UK, which is the UK's innovation agency and is really a very business-focused funder of innovation, and an organisation called Research England that funds the block grants into English universities, and works very closely with the equivalent bodies in the devolved nations in the UK. So that means we cover all the disciplines and all the major sectors where research and innovation are conducted. And that's an extraordinary opportunity then to think about the whole research and innovation system and some of these systemic issues that pervade the system and make it less successful, I think, and also less attractive and kind of celebrated. So I'm really keen to do a whole range of things in that vein, and so an example would be a thing called the 101 Jobs That Change the World campaign that we're running, which is little vignettes of 101 people working in research and innovation who do not consider themselves to be researchers and innovators. So, for example, one of the early movies, which you can see on our website, is the person who works as the chef on our Antarctic research base, which is utterly crucial job in research and innovation, and that person is a core part of the research and innovation system, and she tells a little bit about her job and what she does, and that kind of quite subtle intervention, I think, is really a useful way to try and shift the culture.
Yeah, it's great that you're acknowledging those people, because I guess when research is published, then the chef on that boat or the lab technician, they're not acknowledged in the author list, are they?
Typically not, and I think that's, as you say, it doesn't reflect the contributions that people have made. And I think a lot of the reward and recognition system in the research and innovation system at the moment is very heavily focused on the individual contributions of individual researchers, and that's a huge pressure on those people. A lot of the anxieties, particularly early career researchers, but actually mapping right through to some of the most senior scientists, is how can I continue to deliver on this rather arbitrary set of outputs that are considered valuable, when really I know that to be successful, to make the whole endeavour successful, I need to be focusing on a wider range of activities, and we need to give people the chance to do that, because that is what will really drive the creative and thriving system that we need to see.
Okay, I'm just having a look to see if there are any questions from our digital audience, and just remind you that if you do have a question, you can click on the raise hand button in Zoom, and we'll let you know, and you can ask a question. Okay, I think we've got one question coming in now, so we'll just unmute that person, and then you can ask your question to Ottoline.
Hello, I'm Dr. Jubilatul Nahar. I have one question that research science innovation is a continuous method. It is not method, it's a continuous process. Like, for example, one person, he completed his PhD, but he didn't still innovated his science that he or she want to. So he want to do more and more research and more collaboration. Do you think that this pandemic situation creates a big wall for the international collaboration and research science, and how this wall can be break to more and more collaboration and more interaction, and get the chance to continue their research and innovation? Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think I would agree with you that research and innovation is a continuous process. One of the reasons it's so successful is it's a mechanism that allows you to document really clearly what you've done and how you've done it, and the conclusions that you have drawn in a way that's publicly available and everybody else can build on. So it's inherently an iterative process that accumulates knowledge and understanding over time. So that continuation process is crucial, and the more people who can engage with the work that you've done and learn from that and build on it, the better. And absolutely, the people involved, I think, are always, science is done by people, they're crucial. And the way that those people interact and talk to each other and engage with each other is a really valuable part of the process. So, we were talking earlier about Einstein and his lone genius idea. Actually, a huge amount of the excitement at that time in physics revolved around very deep engagement between the different people involved at the time. It's not that anyone ever works in isolation in that way. And so I absolutely agree that we need to think hard about aligning the opportunities for people, but at the same time, the opportunities for connectivity, for joining those people up in different ways, and for those people to build careers in the research and innovation system that catalyze the movement of those ideas through the system. So that could be, periods of time working overseas, but actually also working in other sectors. I think it's really important to connect up better the discovery science base with the innovation and industrial science base. So people moving between academia and industry, for example, in both directions repeatedly is a really important part of creating that well-connected system with people driving forward the creative discoveries and inventions that we need.
Okay, we have another question from our audience. Here we go.
Hi there. Thanks very much. Nice to see you this morning. My name's Vary. I'm Head of Public Engagement at the University of St Andrews. I'm also the chairperson of the Scottish Public Engagement Network and ScotPen. And it's about public engagement professionals I want to ask, because we have been at the forefront of a type of culture change within our institutions for 10, 20 years, some of us. And the recent ScotPen Welcome Engagement Award, which was a 1 million award, where public engagement professionals, we actually ran that and administrated it, and we were able to show that we raised the quality and quantity of public engagement within Scotland, so on a national basis. My question around that then, with that in mind, is how can we help? What can we do? Can you involve us more? The reason I ask is because I know that our membership feels a little bit disenfranchised from the whole culture change perspective, even though we are really experts in this area. So yeah, how can we help and how can we be involved? Thank you.
No, thank you very much. That's I always like the "how can I help" question. We need all the help we can get, for sure. And I absolutely agree with you that the public engagement community is crucial. I've done quite a lot of meetings and so on with people in your community over the year and a half I've been doing this job. And again, to me, it's a crucial part of the culture change precisely in the context of this taking down of the wall. I think a lot of people in the research system view public engagement as still very much on a kind of deficit model. I have to be the expert who knows everything, and I want to talk to people about what I do, but it starts from an assumption that it's about information going from the scientist to the member of the public. And that is, however high quality that is as an engagement activity, even if it involves a very wonderful two-way conversation, I think researchers and innovators have got to learn to see it from the other direction, that they're going into a conversation with someone who knows things and has experiences that they don't have, and it's really valuable for them to know what those experiences are and to understand what matters to people and how they think about the world. And so I think that cultural shift, again, which is fundamentally about this wall, taking down the wall, as you say, is crucial. And you and your colleagues are doing a fantastic job in supporting the delivery of that. And one of the things I'm really interested in, and we're thinking about quite hard in UKRI, is how we can drive initiatives that start in the communities rather than start in the research system, and that emphasising the fact that everybody has something crucial to bring to the table. And so I will definitely take you up on that and get back to you to ask you how you think we could do that better.
I guess that kind of dialogue is especially important when it comes to communication about things like COVID-19.
I think the pandemic has been very interesting in this entire context because, at least in principle, the way it's played out in the UK, where my most direct experience is scientists standing up on television every night for a long time, and you see the scientific process live. And it starts with, I don't know. It starts with, here is a new thing. We don't know about it. We don't know what the answer is. We need to know what the answer is. It's really important. We have a lot of work that's gone on in the past on related things that we can draw on and therefore use to formulate hypotheses about what will and won't work. And that's what we're going to try, because we've got to do something now. But then, the next week, we've got some more data and we've understood whether our intervention is working or not, and we're feeding that into the new. And so you can see live that iterative process that we were talking about earlier. And I think that's been very valuable because of the wider concept that science will somehow tell you the answer, which it won't. It will provide fantastic tools for you to navigate uncertainty. And those tools and that information needs to be fed into the wider kind of socio-political decision-making process to figure out what to do. And we've seen that so powerfully in COVID, and we now have to kind of reiterate that in the context of things like climate change, which is another major global crisis where science has a key role to play in that woven in everybody must play their part role. Science is not a kind of knight in shining armor rising over the horizon to solve all your problems for you. It is a vital tool in helping you as an individual, as a community, as a nation, as a world community to solve problems, to navigate uncertainty. And it's got to be, as I've said before, by everyone, for everyone. And I agree with you. COVID has really highlighted that, and capturing that essence and rolling it forward is a really key opportunity now as we try to build back.
Thank you. Let's take another question from our audience.
That might be me again.
Yeah, I think it's a follow-up question.
In a way, but it's also a moving on question as well, in that there is one thing that UKRI could possibly do to help us to help UKRI. And I would be very, very keen, and I know a lot of my colleagues would be, to see a centrally based call for academic research on the practice of public engagement. The reason I say that is because it would be great to have the academic evidence that we can place to our senior managers and to our researchers both, showing them this is the difference that, for example, community-led engagement can make to your research, whether it be anthropology to quantum physics. We all know there's a difference can be made. What we need is the evidence to put in front of them in the manner that our academics understand. And rightly or wrongly, that's peer-reviewed articles for all the problems that might have. And I find that is the most persuasive way for me to embed engagement within my principal's office framework. So something where we bring researchers and practitioners together to put the practice into research and the research into practice would be a lovely thing. Just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Would you be asking me for money, maybe?
Well, I'm sure everyone does all the time, but you know what? We could possibly have something through EPRC, but what we need is a specific call that puts that to the forefront.
Thanks. It's a fair challenge, and where I would completely agree with you more broadly, we have a tremendous interest in UKRI in what works, in evidence-based interventions in the research and innovation system to see what will work, what will lead to the improvements that we want to see. And I would agree with you that what works in public engagement, for example, is a really interesting question that needs research and analysis to address.
I want to ask you, Ottoline, about how it was making the switch from being a botanist at the University of Cambridge to, for the last year and a half, working at UK Research and Innovation. How did you find that?
Well, it's certainly been a major change in many ways, but I would argue in other ways not so much. So my academic training is in plant developmental biology, which fundamentally, you can describe it as trying to understand how plants decide what to do and what plants do. And what I worked on is effectively a resource allocation problem. I worked on shoot branching control and the way in which plants make decisions about how much to invest in new shoots versus keeping everything into one shoot versus the root shoot balance. So how plants decide how bushy to be is fundamentally a resource investment question, and they make it through it's a multi-scale process. So there's things going on at cellular and tissue and whole plant level, and it's driven very heavily by communication across the system with lots of feedback. And so it's this multi-scale distributed decision-making process that triggers investments. And at some level, the research and innovation system is exactly that. It's a multi-scale distributed decision-making process. And a lot of my job is to try to tune the investment portfolio to optimize the activities in that system. And so a lot of the thinking, I think, that complex multi-scale systems, which is really, those are the things I find really exciting. How you get these extraordinarily organized behaviors, these really effective systems in my old life plants, in my new life research and innovation, how you optimize those systems in a way that considers what's going on at those multiple scales, because all of those scales are important. An individual researcher in a laboratory, in a library, right through to a nation and indeed a world trying to solve problems like climate change. So there are big differences in my day-to-day life, but also I think the intellectual challenges are really quite similar.
Thank you, Ottoline. I think we're coming to the end of our time for this conversation today. So thank you very much for being with us. And for the people in the audience, we will be back in 5 minutes speaking to Anne Lamp, who's CEO of a startup called Traceless. So do stay and join us for that conversation. And you can stay online for the 5-minute break if you wish to. Thanks again.
Thank you.